Welcome, everybody. Look for a motion to approve or amend the agenda.
So move, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve this agenda. All in favor say yes.
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 Motion carries 2-0. First up, presentations, Curry County Recreational Trail Work update.
No, we took that off the agenda.
We took that off, okay.
We just voted to approve the agenda. My apologies,
all right.
Mr. Chair. We had decided, and I don't think Staff Jesuit got the right information on that. We postponed that from a presentation and amended it from a presentation
Okay,
to a workshop. I did read a letter related to that today.
my apologies. So first up then is Curry County Broadband Action Team Workshop Future Proposals. Commissioner Boyce.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. This
Welcome,
summer-
Ted. A little late, but
Well, it's actually still 2 o'clock by my phone when I walk.
2:01.
Yeah, you got to get used to the clocks here. It varies.
Oh, okay.
It's not the way to do it when you're a brand new employee. Is start being late right off the bat. So.
So if any of the public doesn't know, we have a new county council here, Ted Fitzgerald. We had a little fun with historic. I'm not going to ask you to tell that bomb story again, but
No.
Okay.
that needs to be written down for sure.
Yeah, I should write it down for sure.
You blame it on your sister. I always did, or on my sisters. So, Mr. Chair, we're pretty excited about this. We need to see if we have our other participants that have virtualed in. If you're hearing this there, Mr. Jerome.
Shit.
Oops.
Oh, here it is. Okay.
And I'm having a heck of a time finding my packet.
Yeah, I'm gonna get there.
Here we go. So nobody will ever know you were late, Council Fitzgerald.
They will, because I'm gonna tell them.
It's 2:02 now.
If you're not early, you're late. Wow.
How's
okay.
our audio? Let's start with Director Haga. Are we okay on audio? What a distinguished group. Do we have Representative Boomer Wright on yet? No. Boy, he was a definite. Joe Fresnel, my goodness, good to see you. Thank you for all your help. We have Rachel Maddock Hughes. We have Coos Curry Electric Co-op CEO Bischoff, and I think I'm going to read something here real quick, just so the public knows why we're here. 22 of Oregon's 36 counties are now represented by broadband action teams, often referred to as BATS. And we certainly expect that number to increase over the next year. These groups include representatives from all levels of government, nonprofit organizations, school districts, healthcare providers, internet service providers, various private sector partners, utilities, and others, all coming together to promote and develop affordable, future-ready networks within their communities. Coos, Curry, and Douglas counties are currently not represented by a broadband action team, and as such may be disadvantaged when competing for grant dollars from Oregon, the NTIA, USDA, and other funding sources. We know that the draft rules, draft ARPA, CPBDP handbook, page 7 for ARP grant states the sole eligible activity for this program is the construction and deployment of broadband infrastructure projects, otherwise referred to as projects. The other reliable 100 Mbps broadband service to locations lacking at least 100 to 20 Mbps megabytes reliable service, with 56% of Curry County's population living outside of our 3 incorporated areas, and likely with similar percentages in Coos and Douglas counties, a significant portion of our residents are likely to be left behind if we do nothing. And I underline this part: this impacts economic development, healthcare, education, and many other opportunities that fast, reliable, and affordable broadband provides. This work session will explore opportunities to best position our citizens and our counties to solve the ever-widening digital divide in our areas. So board, what I'm hoping is through this workshop, that we can, perhaps in a couple weeks, put together a contract with Sequoia Consulting, or put that out for bid, that would put us in the Broadband Action Team program. And as we know, there is a substantial amount of money that is available. And we've also included the other local providers, Ziply and Spectrum have all been notified. And we'll just keep trying to engage them in this conversation and the hopeful decisions that we'll make related to this. So, Mr. Fresnel, you come highly recommended. I've really enjoyed our conversations. You've been a spark plug for all of Oregon in this very important rural. And my goodness, there's so much information coming out. The president and his staff just sent out a grant funding opportunity for 4 counties, and that was, I think, that was Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, and Lane. But 2 of those, and it was a coastal reach, representing 4 coastal counties, except Benton and Polk were not on the coast, so I had a little fun with that. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and we want to give you the floor first. Thanks again.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyce. Commissioners, guests, I see a lot of friendly faces on here, people I know and have worked with. It's good to see Jason from Douglas Fastnet. You guys do amazing work over in Douglas County and the surrounding areas. I've been a big fan of Douglas Fastnet for years, so it's nice to see you on the call. Commissioner, I don't know if you have my PowerPoint presentation that you guys can put up, or if you want to give me sharing capabilities, or if neither of those work, I can certainly just speak to stuff.
Stand by for just a moment. Jerome, Mr. Jerome, I presume that you heard that request for Mr. Fresnel's PowerPoint.
Looks like he does. How's that, Joe?
And Mr. Fresnel, he's in the control room, so if you need to move or go to the next slide, whatever, he can hear you.
Great. Yeah, does anybody see it? I don't see it yet.
Yeah, we see it.
Oh, you see it. Well, the people on the call don't see it. So,
Okay. I don't know how to fix that.
Okay.
Why don't we just
Well-
go him sharing?
He's working on it.
He's going to share the
Okay.
screen now.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Ah, that's not it.
Oh. The Rural Electric Cooperative Broadband Benchmarking Report is not it, Joe?
It's not it. No, it's why have a broadband action team?
Did you hear that, Jerome? It's the
He'll find it.
And I don't have to have slides. I can. Those of you who know me know I can talk.
yeah.
And it was dated today. I think it was titled "Why Have Broadband Action Teams?" 11/02/22 was the title. I emailed it yesterday. Commissioner, I don't know. I don't see it.
They're still working on it, bud.
Okay.
Jerome, why don't we just let him share our screens or whatever, and he can do the presentation himself.
Gentlemen, he'll have to share his screen, so pressing the same button that I just did, but on his end.
So Joe, can you hit your share screen button?
To the right.
I don't have permission.
He doesn't have permission, Jerome.
Yeah, the organizer has to give me permission. Or make me the presenter.
I can see that share is crossed out, so.
There it is. He's got it. All right, you're a
All right.
presenter.
All right, let's see.
And Jerome, I just forwarded you the email again. With the
See if I-
PowerPoint.
Share. All right. Can you see? I know it's not in presenter mode, but can you see the slides?
Yeah, we see it.
Yes.
All right. I have a broadband action team. There we go. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to chat about broadband action teams. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president of Blue Mountain Networks, and we're an internet service provider that provides broadband service and telephone service in 30 plus communities, all rural in the Pacific Northwest. The thing I think I'm most proud of is the fact that we serve every community in the 2 least densely populated counties in Oregon with fiber to the home. And we don't draw from the Universal Service Fund, so there's no monthly subsidies that make that happen. This was just, in both of those cases, good public-private partnerships that made that possible. And so folks in Fossil, Mitchell, and Spray, and Grass Valley, and Morrow, those folks actually have fiber to the. I don't have fiber to the home at my house yet, and they have fiber to the home, and they're paying urban-like or better prices for their internet and enjoying the benefits of that. I remember we got Fossil, Mitchell, and Spray done in the middle of the pandemic, and the feedback. We've got a board member who. And this speaks to your strategic plan and why broadband is so important. One of our board members calls every new install. And so, that's his passion, is to find out what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, how we can be better. And the feedback from folks in Fossil, Mitchell, and Spray was just tremendous. There was one gal who said, if I were younger and still able to do it, I'd be doing cartwheels in my front yard because of the internet and their ability to work from home and get doctor's appointments at home where they couldn't before, and their kids were able to go to school using the internet at home. And even now, where children have gone back to school, there's still, for many, a homework gap. We call that a homework gap, where there's good internet at school, and they use the internet at school. And then a lot of what they have to do is on tablets or on the internet, and they get home and they don't have fast internet, or they don't have reliable internet, or they don't have internet at all. And so there's this huge gap between those who have that at home and their ability to succeed at school and those who don't. And so just that kind of lays the groundwork for why I'm passionate about rural Oregon. And then many of you also know that I was on the Oregon Broadband Advisory Council for almost 13 years and chaired it for most of that. And I was on the council representing rural Oregon. So multiple appointments by the governor to that position. And so that's how I got involved in statewide rural initiatives. So there have been questions about the money, and this is just a little bit of the money. These are the funding sources that are unusual. These do not include funding sources that are more common, like the rural RDOF, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, the NTIA's Reconnect, our USDA's Reconnect Fund, and those are all generally annually. Those funds are funded, and then there are grants and loans and grant loan combinations that are funded through those funds for infrastructure and for devices. But these are some of the ones that are part of the buzz. So the state did secure a $500,000 EDA grant for broadband mapping, and they're in the middle of that right now. That probably won't be finalized until early next year at the earliest. I'm thinking it'll be later because the FCC's map isn't even done yet. The Oregon Broadband Fund, which several years ago we expanded the Universal Service Fund contributions in the state to include wireless. So cell phones, and that additional, so it lowered the percentage that you paid for the state universal service fund on a traditional telephone line, but then threw in a small universal service fund fee on cell phones every month, and the state takes excess out of the state universal service fund every year. The PUC does, and grants to the broadband fund, which is managed by the broadband office, dollars out of that. So last year or early this year was $1.5 million. We haven't heard if there's going to be another grant award at the end of this year or first of next year, but there is a $1.5 million in that fund. And then $157 million from the ARPA Capital Projects Fund. And that they're going through the rulemaking right now. So some of you might have been involved in making comments on the draft rules that were due at the end of day on the 28th of October. And so there's a handbook, and I'll actually quote part of the rules from that help to set the stage for who can have access to these dollars. And then the big dollars. This is the one everyone has been hearing about, the BEAD fund, Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Fund. That is a guaranteed so you see $100 million plus the formula. It's a guaranteed $100 million for every state and territory that opted in, and all of them did. So every state and territory gets $100 million. And then there's a formula that the statute, the infrastructure fund at the federal level has in it that will be applied based on data that is gathered at the FCC that shows served and unserved and size of the state, and there's this big formula. So we're expecting somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion to be granted to Oregon, just Oregon, for the BEAD fund. We won't know until next year, and those funds won't everyone's expecting those funds won't be available until early 2024. And then in progress right now is the Digital Equity Act, which is another $782,000 plus the formula, so it'll be bigger than that. And this is one that I want to make sure that we chat about. So if I forget to, as I start talking about the why we should have a broadband action team, we should come back to the Digital Equity Act. So Rachel, I'm going to hold you accountable for making sure I don't miss out on talking about digital equity before we move on. All right. So this is the BEAD program and the estimated timeline. I'm not going to bore you with all of this, but you've got my slides now, I think. And so you'll have this, and it kind of walks you through the timeline. So 5-year plan, four-year implementation. This thing goes way out there. So this huge program, that could be $1 billion for infrastructure in Oregon. This thing is going to go on for years. So it's not something that we want to lose out on the South Coast, because this is going to be the primary funding mechanism for broadband infrastructure for years to come. So really important that we get involved in it. And that's why I put this up. And then the Digital Equity Act, and I will talk a little bit now on this slide. So Rachel, you're off the hook. You get to check that box, put that on your resume that you kept Joe out of trouble one more time. Digital, so when we talk about the internet, we talk about first accessibility. So is it available? Is there availability of really fast internet that is going to meet the needs of an individual, a family unit, or a business, or even a community or a region? So that's the big infrastructure push. And that's where everybody is spending so much of their time. And then there's adoption. So, it's interesting. You might be surprised that there are population groups out there that don't understand how the internet can lift them up, lift their families up, make their business stronger, more resilient, give them access to government in ways that they couldn't imagine without the internet. Whereas, and I've talked about prior to the internet, if you wanted to talk to your state legislator, you generally had to go to Salem and hope that you can get an appointment or that they'll let you in to see them. If you want to talk to your federal legislator, you're good luck catching them in the state. Generally, you would have to fly to Washington, D.C., and generally, you're only going to get to talk to some staff member, not them. Well, now with the internet, and most of you have probably participated in virtual town hall meetings where you're getting the chance to actually interact one-on-one virtually with your legislator, either at the state level or at the federal level. None of that was possible without the internet. And so, and this is when you take the adoption, sometimes the adoption there are barriers to adoption based on age or culture. We found in one of the back-to-back, so we did several statewide surveys when I was in the Broadband Advisory Council, looking at adoption rates and utilization rates. And so not just what's available, because we knew we had all these infrastructure gaps, but what are people actually, are they using the internet where it is available? And if not, what are the barriers? And one of the things that surprised us, and these two surveys I think were 3 years apart, was from survey number 1 to survey number 2, 3 years apart, we actually saw a statewide decline in adoption of broadband by a particular ethnic group. And so that raised all kinds of questions. Why? Why would now, as people are learning more and more about the internet, this was still pre-pandemic, why would people suddenly stop using the internet when they were before? So there was some cultural thing, because it was a specific ethnic group, there was some cultural thing going on, and we didn't have the funds to dig into that. And we should have been able to, and would have been more responsible, I think, of us as a state to dig into that and try and figure out what barriers had society or the state erected between this ethnic group and adoption utilization of the internet. And then that's the third tier or third leg of the stool is full utilization. So you got the infrastructure availability, adoption, where you're actually getting internet service, and sometimes a barrier might be affordability. We can't lose sight of that. But then utilization, once you've actually got it, are you using the internet to its best and highest use? Are you able to use the internet for telehealth and telemedicine, for education, for e-government, for e-commerce, for economic development, for all of these things, education? I think I said that twice. And this is where these digital skills come in. So the Digital Equity Act actually is going to focus on groups of people that are traditionally left out or are more at risk. And it's not just people of color. That's what everybody's first reaction is. Well, it's people of color. Well, yes, it is, but it's also the aging. It's also veterans. I mean, there's this whole federal definition of inclusion and equity that talks about these specific groups that we're trying to target, so that we're actually reaching every citizen. Every citizen has equal opportunity to leverage this great to have access to this great tool, but then to leverage it to its best and highest use. And so even if, and I saw an email being circulated that, we shouldn't bother with a broadband action team. And I'm just going to address this directly, that we shouldn't, because an organization on the South Coast got an RDOF grant. And so there's not going to be any more money coming. Well, first of all, that's patently not true. And I'll read you some excerpts from the rules that will help to to clarify that because somebody is misinforming citizens down there. And we don't want misinformation that causes us to lose out on this great opportunity. But even if all of the South Coast was already covered with internet, this fund right here would still be at your fingertips if you knew how to leverage it to help people then get educated and trained on how to use the internet. So it's not just about infrastructure, it's about digital literacy, digital skills. And this also includes, I think, some devices as well, because some people may have internet access, but all they've got is a cell phone. And I don't know about you guys, but you see me wearing my reading glasses. As I age, this screen gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it's harder for me to do things. And I can't imagine doing homework on a cell phone. And yet we've got kids who are doing homework on a cell phone because that's the only device their family has. So next slide I'm going to move to is what do the rules say? And this is out of the VTAP handbook. So page 8, so you can go and look at this. So project priority is closing the digital divide, regional focus. Now these are their words, not my words. Regional focus. Funds are limited, and thus priority will be given to applications seeking to close the digital divide at a regional scale between incorporated areas and across city and or county boundary lines. Requests for assistance developing a connectivity solution for a single municipality are allowed, but the department may ask such applicants to seek more partners and consider a broader study area. So why did Commissioner Boyce invite county commissioners from 2 adjacent counties? Well, this is why. Yes, a county has a much, much better chance of getting dollars than a municipality does. But 3 counties working together have an exponentially greater opportunity to get funds than a single county because they're focused on regional solutions. Now, I asked the manager of the broadband office, why is that? And he said, well, pragmatically, we're a staff of 5. So the broadband office is 5 people. Now, they have approval to hire 8 more. But even then, 14 people managing perhaps north of $1 billion coming from the federal government for infrastructure planning, mapping, and digital equity. That's a lot of administrative burden. So he is saying selfishly, we're gonna look at where can we get the biggest bang for our buck, and generally that's not a single project in a single municipality, because the administrative burden of handling that over that long timeline we just looked at is enormous. Whereas if we can have a project that looks at an entire county or a multi-county area, then the administrative burden seems to be worthwhile. So, and I'm paraphrasing our conversation a little bit, but not by a lot. An eligible location means a street address location. Now, this is the question of, are there dollars available for Curry County and Douglas County and Coos County to your south? Are there dollars available? And these next 2 come right out of the ARPA BDP CP draft. This is the handbook, which is the rules, okay? The rules are very short and they point to the handbook. So this handbook says the definition of an eligible location means a street address location where a household or business is not currently served by a wireline connection. So satellite doesn't count, Starlink doesn't count, no matter how great you think it is, that reliably delivers at least 100 megabits per second of download speed and 20 megabits of upload speed. A served location means a street address location where a household or business is currently served by a wireline connection that reliably meets or exceeds symmetrical download and upload speeds of at least 100 megabits per second. So same symmetrical, so same upload and download speed. So it's not the 100 by 20. So in order to be considered served, you have to have a reliable connection that provides 100, is capable of 100 megabits symmetrical. And then an unserved location means a street address location where a household or business is not currently served by a wireline connection that reliably delivers at least 10 meg of download speed and 1 meg of upload speed. I have to tell you, if you're trying to do e-commerce or digital education, online education, or I don't, other than email, I don't know what you really can do with 10.1. I was actually in Vernonia a little while ago, a few weeks ago, and went into the library to talk to them because we just built fiber to the home in Vernonia. This is an anecdotal conversation, but went into the library because libraries are the hub of the community. If you can't afford broadband, if you don't have broadband, or you don't have the devices that you need to access broadband, you go to the library. Everybody knows that, right? So I walk in the library and I was pleased to see they've got computers set up. It was very nice. It was cozy. It was quiet, which was good because it's a library. And they had Wi-Fi. So I was talking with the librarian and her assistant. I said, so how is your internet? And they said, it was horrible. And I said, well, let's do a speed test. So I did a speed test. They were getting 9 megabits download over their Wi-Fi. Now it's not Wi-Fi, it's connected to their router. So maybe they were getting 10 at the router, and they were getting 760 some odd kilobits per second, not megabits, not gigabits, kilobits per second upload speed. And so the assistant there was a teenage gal who was still in high school, who was interning at the library. And she started openly talking about how miserable an experience it was to try and do anything on the internet at the library. So we're fixing that in Vernonia, just so you know. But that's why that 10.1 is still egregious to me, that we even still talk about that 10.1. So I think if you don't have 100 by 20, you should be considered unserved at this point, because did you know that the average American household today, so this is all in, this is everybody who doesn't have internet, everybody who it's not available, everybody who, maybe they have a computer, but that's all because that's all they do on it, all the way up to the super techie folks. The average household has 25 or 26, depending on which study you look at, connected devices in the household. So that could be a smart doorbell, it could be a smart thermostat, it could be a smart camera that uploads the video to the security video to the cloud. It could be your laptop, your Apple Watch, a tablet, any of those, smart TV, a smart refrigerator. 26 in the average American household. So that's why I say if you don't have 100 by 20, you're probably considered, you're at least underserved. Because you're going to have a hard time in the next year or two keeping up with those kinds of speeds at your house. Eligible projects, and this is the one I want to make sure that everyone hears, because I've heard we won't have eligible projects in our counties because Coos Curry Electric got this RDOF grant. The sole now I didn't write this. I'm just reading you what's in the handbook. The sole eligible activity for this program is the construction and deployment of broadband infrastructure projects that offer reliable, symmetrical 100 meg broadband service to locations lacking at least 100 by 20 of reliable service. So I know I'm long-winded, but this was a lot to cover, and I hope it's helpful. So this next one is, where are the 3 counties in question? And Commissioner Boyce mentioned that 22 of the 36 counties are currently represented by broadband action teams, and very well, I think, many of them very well positioned to take advantage of some of these dollars, if not a lot of these dollars that are coming to the state. And we actually have on the call, I saw Aaron Moss joined us. Aaron is the facilitator for the Morrow County Broadband Action Team. And Morrow County has an electric cooperative in it that serves part of Morrow County. So it's Columbia Basin Electric Cooperative. And they got an RDOF grant as well. And Morrow County has done a full strategic assessment of the county and is pulling together an actually has several engineering views of Morrow County and how to close the gaps. And so if you have questions about how that works in a county where there is an electric cooperative that has received an RDOF grant and what the opportunity really is, don't take my word for it. Talk to Aaron Moss when we get to the questions from the commissioners. So why have a broadband action? And you did notice that Coos, Curry, and Douglas County are white. That means you don't have a bat. So we talked about, and he actually read this already, so I'm not going to read that, but the last two bullets, from a service provider's perspective and from the longtime chair of the Broadband Advisory Council's perspective, I can tell you that there are always better outcomes where there is greater community engagement. My company actually won't build fiber where there are not local broadband champions because our outcomes are less optimal there. And often we find that it's difficult to build where there aren't broadband champions. So if you want to attract investment in your county or your region, you have to be engaged. And this is not a bunch of naysayers. These are people who are solutions oriented, who are identifying problems, looking for ways to solve them collectively. And broadband is one of the greatest ways to do that. And then I want to reiterate, because the draft rules were pretty clear in stating that priority is going to be given to regional projects. So broadband action teams are the most effective way that we know today to actually make that happen. And so with that, I'll put up my contact information in case any of you want to contact me afterward with questions. Feel free to email me. It's simple. It's jfurnell@bluemountainnet.com. And Commissioner Boyce and members, and I'll stop sharing now if I can figure out how to do that.
Mr. Furnell, thank you very much. I always learn a great deal in your presentations and talking to you on the phone. I think, Ms. Maddox Hughes, can we go to CEO Bischoff, Coos Curry Electric next, and then we have a member in the audience that I think would like to give a little bit of public comment. And we can do that in a workshop. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome, Mr. Bischoff. Good to have you here.
It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to address the board, and really want to say and express my appreciation for your efforts, Commissioner Boyce, in bringing this group together today and really facilitating the development of a broadband action team here on the South Coast. You know, at Coos Curry Electric, since we started our project, our broadband project, and stood up Beacon Broadband, we've recognized the importance of getting a broadband action team formed here in order to help us be competitive. And this is not just Beacon Broadband, but all of the broadband service providers. Help us all be competitive in seeking grant funding that's available, because whether it's Beacon Broadband or any of the other service providers here on the South Coast, the more access our citizens, our neighbors in our communities have access to this new essential service, the better we are economically, the better we are educationally, medically, and so forth, as Mr. Furnell has mentioned. And, you know, this really started, I think this conversation really got kicked off when you and I had an informal conversation at Curry Electric's member appreciation event there in Gold Beach this summer. And you really took the bull by the horns from that point and have been driving and leading this effort since then. And so I really appreciate that effort. As Joe mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of funding that's coming out and will be available. Just from the perspective of Curry Electric and our member focus, our intention, and the reason our board of directors stood up our broadband project was because you know, we recognize that the folks in the more densely populated areas of Coos and Curry counties had access to internet of some sort, but the folks that got into the more rural areas, and as was mentioned in the introduction, you know, that's upwards of 50%, half of our citizens, you know, and some of those may have access to DSL, but that's back to that 10-1 speed that Mr. Furnell mentioned. So we have tremendous need here amongst our Curry Electric members, and in Curry County, that's just virtually everyone. In Coos County, that's only the rural folks. Curry Electric does not serve any of the cities in Coos County. We serve, you know, we serve out in the Coquille Valley. We serve in Fairview and Sumner and the Valley, and those people have virtually no access. So we've recognized the need, and we've got it's a tremendous project to bring fiber to the premises to all of those, all the people here on the South Coast, and we need not only the strength of our community in order to do that, but we need the strength of the funding that is being made available to be able to compete for that. And so this broadband action team is essential to help us in that endeavor, and absolutely appreciate the efforts of everybody involved in putting this together. Thank you.
Well, I'm real determined to turn those white counties, at least in Southwest Oregon, into colored counties. My apologies, Mr. Chair. There is no public comment, but I do have Lynn Coker here, was an invited guest, and so I just wanted to clarify that. We did lose Coos Curry Douglas Business Development Executive Director Teresa Haga. She had to go to a 2:30, but she's working with me on, obviously with the other counties. We had Tom Kress that was invited, Commissioner of Douglas County, and Melissa Cribbins, Commissioner of Coos County. They're very interested, and I had commitment from one of them. I can't remember which one now, and also Representative Boomer Wright. And I don't want to speak for David Brock Smith, but he's aware of this tremendous amount of state funding that is available, and he wants to have all parts of the rural portions of his district represented as much as possible. So before we go to Mr. Coker, can we offer the microphone to Rachel Maddox Hughes? Thanks for being here one more time. We really appreciate it.
Commissioner, thank you so much for having us here today. Really excited to continue this work with you. Just a little quick background for the other commissioners and other folks in the room. So I'm Rachel Maddox Hughes. I'm the founder of Sequoia Consulting, and we are a rural technical assistance firm here in Oregon and also in the Pacific Northwest. We're growing. And we have been supporting communities around broadband since the pandemic began. And then we have also wonderful folks like Joe Fennell on the team who've been doing broadband, obviously, way before that. I myself also have 7 years experience in the digital equity and inclusion field. But what we're really seeing is that without broadband action teams, communities are going to lose out. As you see these funds being available for kind of non-traditional entities, you know, you've got communities that don't understand necessarily the process of looking at projects in their community, working with partners, and broadband action teams really bring together the right folks, like the internet service providers like Beacon and others, and Douglas Fastnet, and folks who really want to serve their community. But you just need a little bit more oomph to get all the right people in the room, and it's really important that folks from the education world, from the health world, community champions are all rowing in the same direction. And what we've seen is that broadband action teams really provide a voice for communities at the state level, because as Joe noted earlier, the broadband action team, compared to what they need to do, is fairly small. And so if you don't have vocal representatives both kind of speaking up for your challenges and your opportunities in your region, it kind of just means that you don't have a voice at that table. And it's not that they don't care, but it's just a bandwidth issue. And we've seen the representation of broadband action teams. We have a leadership working group that meets every other week. And with this group, we've been able to even just most recently put together key points in response to the draft rules and handbooks that were put out. And it means that we have a louder voice in our communities. And I will say to you that most of the broadband action teams that we work with on a regular, consistent basis, a lot of them represent rural and frontier areas. And I think it's just, as somebody who grew up in rural Oregon, those communities are near and dear to my heart, and I think it's really important that we support them with the capacity and expertise that they need to create really thriving communities and kind of level the playing field a little bit. So happy to answer any questions you have about broadband action teams across the state or the proposal. I'll leave it up to you now. Thank you.
Thank you again. So I want to go to Mr. Coker, if you want to offer comment.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And then we'll go to either Paul Reckenzone or Aaron Moss immediately following.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come. And Jim, thank you very much, Joe, for the comments that you had to make. I go back a long ways in the internet business, longer than my kids would even like me to say. But nevertheless, I did have the opportunity for years to work alongside a gentleman by the name of Vint Cerf, who was the inventor of the TCP/IP protocol that formulated the basis for the internet. I kind of got put into the projects because I was into email back with AT&T at the time, and we had, get this, we had a year, our first year in internet mail delivery, we were going to have 200,000 customers on mail. 200,000 customers. That's how long ago that was. But having said that, I grew up in the business, ended up, prior to the time leaving the telecommunications and computer business, we ended up digging up the streets in 38 of the largest metropolitan centers in the United States to transform our infrastructure into fiber optic. And that was for the delivery of a variety of commercial services. I was on the commercialization part of the project and enjoyed the heck. I didn't have to put the cable in the ground, but I had to make it turn in a profit. And it's on that point that I come to you, because there's many of us who don't believe that what you're attempting to do is commercially viable. We look at the plans that have been delivered to us, and by the way, getting plans from the CCEC that help us understand is a little bit like a mushroom in the basement, hoping somebody will open the door and throw some trash down so we can eat. It is very, very difficult to get information that lets us make critical stewardship decisions as members. And you could say, well, why the heck do they get involved? What stewardship role can these members possibly have? Well, catch this. The members are losing money if, as we anticipate, rates go up, fees go up, special assessments go up in order to cover the outstanding operating expenses for a failed Beacon broadband and or the inability of Beacon broadband to service its debt. Those are critical factors, and I would love to have somebody from Beacon Broadband come to this group and say, I'm going to give you a 5-year projection on revenue. And I'm going to give you a 5-year projection on the kind of income we anticipate getting from our members. And I will bet you a good part of my Social Security income that a fair amount of money is going to be pulled from members in order to cover the operating expenses and or debt servicing associated with Beacon Broadband, because it is a failed plan as we see it coming out of the gate. It is so tied to the infrastructure associated with state and federal funding. And that is a little bit like if I were a skydiver and you threw me out of a plane and said, I'm going to catch you about halfway down and give you your parachute. That's the equivalent of the business model that we're getting from some of our best consultants. Just believe us, they tell us. Go out and spend the CCEC money, and we will make certain that when the time comes, there will be federal money, there will be state money to help you. Well, I scratch my head, and I say, well, how did that work with the RDOF money that we got just into the latter part of 2020? We were told, and I don't know if this is true or not, because like I said, I'm a bit like a mushroom in the cellar of a basement trying to look out and see what the world's like, but that RDOF money was beautiful cash going to come over a 10-year period. And what we see is that by getting the $14 million and so, we have a much bigger scope of work that we have to go out and take on in order to qualify for the full benefits of that kind of grant. And so the members were sitting back saying, okay, so we had a $60 million project and it didn't include anybody else. Now we got a whole bunch of other people that we have to deliver infrastructure to. How are we going to pay for that? And oh, by the way, of that $14 million that we got, how much does that cover of the expansion associated with moving into other counties, all of it outside the footprint of Curry Electric? I'm just guessing, but I'll bet that $14 million covers somewhere between 20 and 40% of the actual cost of building out that network. That's just my guess. And I bet there are a lot of strings attached to that delivery of those monies as well. And I don't know what those strings are yet. So that comes back, and I'll wrap up here. We are asking, and eventually we will require, greater transparency on the part of the CCEC, in order for us to be good stewards so that we can make sure that our rates don't go up in the near term or the long term, and that we can be confident that we are not going to tip over the CCEC and end up selling it off 5 or 6 years from now because we can't cover the debt, this extraordinary amount of money that is being asked of us in order to build out this infrastructure. And I am open to comments and questions, and I'll be glad to engage with anybody. Thank you very much.
Before we go to the next guest, it would be awfully tough for me not to, just personally as a commissioner and as a representative, to not support Curry Electric fully in all endeavors. You know, my biggest job, I think our biggest job, is to bring people together. And so, there's Representative Wright, welcome. Good to see you, my friend. So, trying to bring everybody together on this very important project, and just the enthusiasm and the absolute demonstrated needs of tremendous varieties for broadband in rural Oregon. That's why we're here. And so that's all I'm going to say at this time, but I want to give the microphone to either Paul Reckenzone or Aaron Moss. Either one is fine.
Wait a minute, just 1 second.
Okay.
You were saying you weren't saying that in your role as a county commissioner, though, were you?
Which portion?
The portion of supporting Curry Electric completely in any endeavor.
I didn't say completely, but I said it'd be hard for me not to support Curry Electric.
Well, as an individual.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Reckenzone, are you next? I think you might have a response to Mr. Coker or just the citizens in general. On.
Turn your mic on.
Commissioner Boyce, are you calling on me or Mr. Moss?
Either one. You're there. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'd love to. I first would like to reassure the commissioners and thank you very much for this opportunity to have a minute to be here. And thank all of the guests, both those that are invited and those that are in the room there. Very grateful that all of you are here to talk about this very important question of a broadband action team on the south coast of Oregon. I can reassure everyone that we do have a business plan that we're confident in. And we believe that we have a path that we're walking on that will provide more substantial broadband on the south of Oregon. I would like to say that whether or not our business plan is a viable business plan, and remember, I have full confidence in it, but whether or not it's a viable business plan, a broadband action team for the south coast of Oregon is incredibly important. We have this tool known as the internet or known as broadband. We have this connectivity tool. And this connectivity tool can create greater vitality on the south coast of Oregon. And a broadband action team will help the service providers in this area meet the needs of the residents of this area. Whether those service providers include Beacon Broadband or not, a broadband action team is incredibly important to help the service providers meet those needs. Whether it is getting additional funding for capital expenditures, whether it is building the digital equity plan, whatever the reason for the funding, the broadband action team can help make that happen. So here at Beacon Broadband, we're incredibly happy that that broadband action team is underway. I see Jason Miller on the call as well from DFN. Incredibly happy that DFN is engaged in hopefully helping create a broadband action team for the south coast of Oregon as well. So we are here to support the development of a broadband action team in any way that we can. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Mr. Moss, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Moss, real quick before you get on there. I have got another meeting at 3, so I have to step out. I just want to say thank you for everybody's attendance here. I am sorry, but I've got a commitment that I just can't. So I'll leave that in the very capable hands of Vice Chair Chris Pash. Thank you, folks. Very capable hands of all three of you guys.
So, Mr. Moss, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. I did want to just pause for a second. I know Representative Wright has had his hands up, and I am more than willing to yield to him for a moment, or I can continue and we can circle back afterwards.
Good call. Thank you. Representative Wright, did you have a comment or comments you wanted to offer?
Well, yes. Well, thank you, commissioners, for this meeting and for Aaron for being so polite. I appreciate that a bunch. I just first want to apologize and say that obviously I need training in being able to read the clock because I thought this meeting was at 3. So I was 15 minutes early, and then all of a sudden I found out I'm an hour late almost. So I apologize for not being here on time. I will also mention I am on the broadband work group for the state. And I do have some questions concerning how money will be delivered. I was not able to attend the last broadband meeting, but I will be brought up to that, up to date here quickly this week to see what happened on that. So whatever I can do to help make sure our patrons and our clients and the people of our 3 counties get broadband, I am all supportive of. So again, I apologize for being late. Thank you.
I think that may not be your fault, and I also see Douglas County Commissioner Tom Kress. And he just unmuted. Welcome, Commissioner Kress.
I'm just realizing maybe I'm late to the party. I honestly thought it was starting at 3.
And that was the original word that went out. My apologies to both of you.
Well, I'm sorry I missed that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Moss, for now, and then we'll come back to Commissioner Kress.
All right, Commissioners, thank you once again for having all of us. I'm going to keep my piece short. My name is Aaron Moss. I have ran for the last year and a half now, or getting close to a year and a half, the Broadband Action Team in Morrow County. In Morrow County, our broadband action team is a group of stakeholders from across the county, including our school district, our health district, and other healthcare providers. Private sector partners, as well as government entities at the city, county, and state level as well. The work that we've done is in large part towards filling in the gaps of infrastructure within Morrow County and working towards some of the grant programs that Joe and Rachel have referenced and mentioned, as well as work on affordability of services within the county, as well as digital skills, including a focus on economic development, telehealth, and professional development as well. So we kind of do holistically all of that work, and my work with Rachel is very similar in building broadband action teams and really positioning the counties that we represent, as well as the work that we do, putting communities in the best position they can to really have all of the opportunities and all the resources and connectivity that more populated communities throughout the state have. And really building on every kind of educational, economic, and digital opportunity that's out there. It's really important for the vitality of our communities as well as for the work that we're doing. I just wanted to emphasize as well, we work closely with all of our internet service providers in areas in which they compete and areas in which they don't. We all come to the table and move in the same direction because we really focus the citizens and the needs of our community first. We spent a long time, I believe, really doing that work and centering the stories of students during COVID, during the pandemic and lockdowns that couldn't come to school and didn't have internet at home. So they'd be bussed into libraries to study from their buses or their cars, the parking lots of libraries, or just not attend school at all. And as we continue to center the work on the members of our community, not only do we build credibility as an entity that represents more than one stakeholder, but also credibility in really remembering who we're trying to serve and building that, not only that narrative, but really building the outcomes that we want from what connectivity means, as Joe mentioned with the digital equity funds, the digital skills, infrastructure, and really filling in all the gaps that exist that were highlighted during the pandemic. So I'm more than willing to answer any questions, but I'm happy to be here. And once again, thank you for having us today.
Thank you, Mr. Motz. So before we go to some hopeful questions there, who has not had a chance to speak yet that would like to join in? Okay, so I have a couple questions. Future dependency on federal funding was a question. A 5-year plan for Coos Curry, business plan. Just some obvious financial concerns that people have had, and I've listened to those concerns, and I just want to make sure that we're addressing those and that we do have that ability to overcome. And of course, the big elephant in the room, even with power and fuels and electricity going up in price, no matter who is at the helm or what the circumstances are, that's just what inflation is doing to the United States of America right now. But are the ratepayers going to be? Is there a legitimate concern that the ratepayers could be saddled with these additional costs over and above normal inflation for the Coos Curry Electric Co-op? How would we answer that? Who could take that on so we can hopefully get past that and move forward?
I'd be happy to take that on, Commissioner Boyce.
Please.
And just respond briefly. That is, this.
Could you turn your volume up just a little bit, please?
Yeah. This meeting is about developing a broadband action team on the South Coast, and so I hate to get too focused on Coos Curry Electric and our broadband project with Beacon Broadband, but Coos Curry Electric spent 2.5 years in feasibility study and planning and preparation for the launch of our broadband project. We developed a very thorough business plan with a financial plan associated with that. We have we provided some basics of that financial plan. We gave a thorough review of the project at our recent annual meeting in June, and we will give another thorough review in our coming annual meeting in 2023. So we are on a path. The National Rural Telecom Cooperative and in conjunction with the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association just recently came out with a report that demonstrates from a survey of 88 other electric cooperatives that electric cooperatives are being very successful in bridging the digital divide, and that they are doing so in a financially responsible and feasible way. And we are launching from a business model that is well proven in that regard. And so we have funding identified. Our board of directors established guardrails from the very beginning of the project that the broadband project would not be subsidized by electric rates, and it has not been to date, nor will it be. So those are a few responses there, and don't want to take any more time with the group on specific Coos Curry Electric and Beacon broadband issues.
Well, thank you again. We know the other service providers, not just in our area, Southwest Oregon, but throughout the state, whatever funds are available, if we don't compete for those funds, then we lose. And so that is a concern that I have. So thank you for that explanation. I think that, as I understand, to the extent Coos Curry Real or Perceived has not provided that information, I think that might be one of our next steps. I mean, you just heard Council Fitzgerald question if as a commissioner I'm supporting Coos Curry Electric Co-op. I'm doing that both as a commissioner and as an individual, but I'm only one member of one board, obviously. So, but I have done my best effort to do my homework and understand this, because I believe it's so very important to the citizens of our county, and not just Curry County, but the entire Southwest Oregon region and all the customers that Coos Curry Electric serves. So I hope that makes sense. And Mr. Fernell, go. Yes, please.
Well, and and I'm not going to speak to the Coos Curry Beacon broadband thing, but I think it's important to note that both my company, so it started as Eastern Oregon Telecom, it's now Blue Mountain Networks, and it's had a transformative effect on the areas that we serve, and arguably it's somewhere around 15,000 square miles of rural Oregon. It was started by two electric cooperatives, and they were the majority. Umatilla Electric Cooperative was the majority shareholder for years and years and years for Eastern Oregon Telecom. And without that investment from the rural electric cooperative, and then Douglas Electric Cooperative was the other one that also started Douglas Fastnet. And I think anyone would be hard pressed to say that Douglas Electric Cooperative's investment in Douglas Fastnet was foolhardy. There are dozens and dozens of examples of rural electric cooperatives who have gone down this path. Very similar business model, very similar challenges. I've got a friend who was in Pennsylvania working for Tri-County Connections, which was a wholly owned subsidiary startup, fiber to the home business from the electric cooperative there, serving rural, remote Pennsylvania. I know it's hard for us to believe that Pennsylvania can have rural, remote areas, but very similar to the South Coast, and they have been wildly successful in their deployment. So, I guess if I were going to say one note of encouragement, it would be a note to encourage those who are fearful to maybe get behind the project, because sometimes when you focus on failing, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as a membership, maybe the members ought to be more supportive of the venture. Again, looking at the history of rural electric cooperatives in deploying broadband around the United States, and I think it's probably wise for me to comment. I'm an ex officio member of the Beacon Broadband Board. I was brought on specifically to advise them, to help them in their endeavor, using my experience. And so I've actually seen the business plan, and I'm pretty confident in it. having been through this for years and years and years. So I don't know if that helps the commission. I certainly hope it does help the Board of Commissioners. I certainly hope it helps the members of Coos Curry Electric Cooperative who are fearful. I think it's a good venture, and it's going to really, really be key. And again, we're talking about broadband action teams, not Coos Curry Electric, but I don't know that we can get past the elephant in the room without addressing it, so that we can talk about how do we move forward as a county or a tri-county area, leveraging a broadband action team to really, really move the ball forward quickly without addressing that. So I appreciate your indulgence in giving me a few more minutes to talk about that issue. And I would really strongly encourage the Board of Commissioners to approve moving forward with the broadband action team. And I certainly hope that Coos County and Douglas County participate as well. That said, one last thing, I put it in the chat. I don't know if anybody's watching it. Since Representative Wright and Commissioner Kress got, and originally I had 3 o'clock too, and had it not been for a friend of mine who said, no, it's at 2 o'clock. I said, no, it's not. It's at 3 o'clock. I would have been late to my own presentation. So I missed somehow on the invitation that we had moved it up an hour. But can we get the two of them a copy of my PowerPoint presentation?
Absolutely.
So they have what I went over before they got here, so they don't miss out on the whole thing. And Representative Wright, Commissioner Kress, if you have any questions about that, my email address is right at the bottom of the PowerPoint presentation. Feel free to call me or email me. And then Commissioner Boyce has my cell phone number, so feel free to share that with them if you want to, Commissioner Boyce. That would be fine.
And I've been kind of dragging my feet to take the full responsibility here for the time change. We actually had, we postponed one presentation or workshop, and that opened up the 2 o'clock slot, and I just, Commissioner Boyce blew it. It's that simple. So it's not that they tuned in late and disregarded proper scheduling. People want to move to Oregon. They want to raise their families here. They want to run their businesses here. And so that's one of the main things that obviously, honestly, gets my interest going. And so I'd like to go to Jason Miller here. I think this is very productive time. I keep learning. I think that we'll have this on recording for our local citizens. And I think that CEO Bischoff gave a good a good synopsis there of where Coos Curry is financially. I think it may take, again, I just want to emphasize that it may take additional information on that to assure the public, and yet we all need oriented, we all need educated. And so thanks, Mr. Fresnel, for mentioning the Tri-County area. That's always worked for Curry County the 6 years that I've been here. I hope it's worked as good for the other counties. But we've got tremendous opportunities here, but how we manage, how we pull everybody together, I think is critical, and I think everyone certainly recognizes that. Mr. Pash?
Commissioner Boyce, yeah, there's 3 hands up. Jason's, Rachel, and Commissioner Wright.
Let's go to Commissioner or State Representative Wright, please.
State Representative, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Long day.
No problem. Just a quick comment. First off, I would love to see the PowerPoint presentation, and if this is recorded, obviously, I'll go back and watch. I'd also like to have contact information of everyone on here so that if I have questions, I can contact each of them. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jason Miller, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. As far Todd Way, our general manager, wanted to be here today, but I had some pressing other meetings, so I'm happy to represent Douglas Fastnet here. Thank you to the board, and also thank you to Beacon Broadband. I know that we have worked together in Coos County already, just as 2 ISP companies on some projects. And I think, with the Broadband Action Committee, it's so important for Douglas, Coos, and Curry to all work together. So all of our people in all 3 counties have a voice and a say when it comes to this funding. I did want to kind of circle back to something Joseph said and just kind of reiterate that there's such a great opportunity here as we build out to rural, that rural gets the equity of the urban. At Douglas Fastnet, I know we're just one ISP, but the way that we're pricing things, we charge the same amount to our rural customers as we do to our urban. And, with the Broadband Action Committee and this funding, it's like a minimum on some of these of 100/10 and some 100 synchronous. But with fiber, we're currently rolling out 2.5 gig synchronous. So for rural people to have 2.5 gig synchronous at the same rates that the urban are paying, it's just completely going to change the landscape and put everyone on equal grounds. So I'm excited to see what that investment by our governments and by our corporations, excited to see how that changes everything for the betterment of people across the country, across Oregon, across our counties. But thank you.
Ms. Maddox, thank you, Jason. Ms. Maddox Hughes, Sequoia Consulting.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just, because Representative Wright and Commissioner Kress missed the first part of our meeting, I just wanted to do a really quick recap and also let you know that I'm available to speak with you at any time if you'd like to learn some more about broadband action teams. But at the highest level, the importance of having a broadband action team for the region is to secure your fair share of the funding that is coming down the pike, and there is a lot of it. So there is the smallest pot of funding is the broadband fund. It's about $1.5 million. And there's the ARPA fund, which is $157 million. All these are on Joe's slides that you'll get as well. Then you have BEAD funding, which is, and then you have digital equity funding. So there's upwards of $1 billion coming down to the state. In the money that is being talked about right now, one of the priority criteria they say is they're looking at regional projects, right? So that is going to get points. And so the best way to ensure regional projects are cohesive and have the capacity and expertise to support them is to bring together a broadband action team. We've seen this in Morrow County. We've seen this in Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, and Lane, one of the broadband action teams that I lead or that my team leads. And so it's really to get that funding in there. And number two, it's for you guys to have a voice at the state level. So our broadband office, while they are staffing up, they are still only 5 people, and they're going to be adding on some more, but it's still not going to be adequate in a lot of ways. And it's not that they're not trying, but it's like you have to have kind of a cohesive voice that we can use to speak with the broadband office, as well as have them speak to your communities. And the communities that have broadband action teams are just better placed to understand funding opportunities, ask questions, raise opportunities, raise challenges at the state level. And so that, at the highest level, it's to get money and to have a voice and really level the playing field for your rural communities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey, we knew a long time ago, actually, that this money was coming. We didn't know how much. And so you see the other counties in Oregon that did prepare, respond, and organize. And so we're in that bottom third that is not organized. So I see that as a big opportunity, maybe even a responsibility for the commissioners here. My plan from here is to submit to the board a plan, and certainly to the Coos and Douglas County commissioners. I'm going to be saying really nice things to them, and sending gifts to their grandkids, whatever it takes, but to get an interest, a legitimate interest in this program. And it's been said so many times, and it's common sense logic that that's from a regional approach. That's how we're going to succeed in this. And so I don't have anything further. I want to open the floor here for a little bit and see if anybody else wants to offer some comments, concerns, questions, clarifications. Please feel free. All right, we got some email exchanges to catch everybody up, and I'll make it up to you, Representative Wright and Commissioner Kress, and thank you very much for tuning in. And I'm the only one I was missing was Commissioner Cribbins, but I know she has quite an interest in representing Coos County on this. So we'll be back to you very soon.
All right, thank you everyone for attending. I appreciate it. And thanks here in the room for everyone attending. At this time, this workshop is adjourned.
Why do counties matter? Simple. Counties provide the services we all depend on. If you're concerned about crime, get a regular flu shot. Drive to work. Take public transportation. Or experience a natural disaster in your community. Chances are you benefit